unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
Doing to see Wanda. Wanda.
Hello and welcome back to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan podcast. We are going to be breaking down the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. We'll split these into probably 2 episodes, and we'll be covering episode 1. I am Jordan Wiegand, and I have, for the first time on this show, my good friend Casey McGeorge.
How is it going, everybody? I'm glad to be on this podcast here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. I was like, this, it'd be good for us to kind of do something else. This is before we knew Superstore was canceled, is when I initially reached out. And if people don't know, if you haven't ever listened to our other show, Casey and I are on a podcast called The Break Room, where we break down NBC's hit sitcom, or formerly hit sitcom, I guess, Superstore. With our friend Aylin Rowland. So we are going to put this episode on that feed as well for people to kind of find us and, if they want to test out the water. So if you're listening on that feed, welcome. Hopefully you make the jump over to us because Casey's going to be here with me for each episode here of the 9. So looking forward to it.
Most definitely.
So I guess just if you want to give a little bit of background of, maybe your first MCU movie, the first, and then also your favorite or something, favorite character, stuff like that.
Sure, absolutely. So let me start off by saying, first, like I said, I'm glad to be. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really happy for that. I have zero experience with the comic books. I never did get in any comic books as a kid. In all fairness, I never even knew who Iron Man was until the first Iron Man movie. I guess if you want to say my first jump into the MCU, which wasn't the MCU but is the MCU, was one of the Incredible Hulk movies. I saw a horrible bootleg version in Iraq when I was deployed that had no background music, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, I couldn't watch it. After we got back, I think from my third tour, a bunch of us got together. We went to go see Iron Man, and I was blown away, completely blown away. Like I said, had no clue who Iron Man was. Honestly, I'd never even heard of him. And if we have time, I can share my story about meeting Stan Lee and how that relates to Iron Man. I did have the pleasure of meeting Stan Lee once. It was a very awesome experience. I've only seen 3 movies in the theaters twice. One of them was the original Avengers. For me, it was that good.
Yeah, 2012.
Yeah, the original Avengers was fantastic. I think Age of Ultron is very underrated and gets a lot of crap when it doesn't need to. And then I've seen all of the Iron Man movies. I have seen all of the Avengers movies. I have not seen all of Guardians of the Galaxy or any of the Thor movies. But as I told you, Jordan, I did purchase that Best Buy exclusive Marvel Infinity War box set last year for like $350.
Yeah, I remember.
And you were like, that's a waste of money. But for me, it is great. So at some point, I need to sit down and go through those movies and watch them all.
I would say it's not a waste of money if you haven't already owned them. For me, I wanted it, but for me, it would be a waste of money because I already own them all.
Well, so I did own most of them, but I own them in Blu-ray, and these are all in 4K.
You got the 4K set.
Yes, Ultra HD 4K set. So, look, I'm single. I live by myself. I have nobody to blow money on but me. So, yeah, I'm going to blow money on stupid stuff like that. Side note, I think I looked at some point over the last couple of months, and that thing is skyrocketed on the secondary market. So if I ever need the money, I can, Because I guess they only did make like 1,000 of them, and they got snapped up pretty quick.
They did. I remember they sold out fairly quickly, actually.
But for me, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, it's great. I know there's a lot more to them, but for me, they're great to literally just sit down for the 2.5, 3 hours or whatever it is, and shut my brain off to the rest of the world and just get lost in whatever's going on in that universe. And just kind of wash everything away and just let myself float away for a little while before having to go back to reality.
Yeah, it's an escape.
I don't know why I could not think of that word. Yes, it is a fantastic escape. The people who make those movies are extremely talented. I don't know if there's a bad one. Maybe one of the Incredible Hulk ones. That's about it. But they all bring something completely different to the table, and that's one of the things I love. They're not all the same movie. They all have distinct personalities and distinct auras and everything about them. And that's what makes it so great, is you're not watching like the same movie kind of pasted over and over and over again throughout all of them.
Yeah, that's a common criticism, though, is that is the case. But, for me, there's just so many different types of, the movies. And I think if we move into WandaVision now, this is their riskiest project, I feel. I feel like the way that, going kind of full into these sitcom decades and having almost full episodes like that is kind of a risky thing. They could have just made a show about Wanda and Vision fighting bad guys, but so far it's going to be, kind of a slow burn, and I appreciate them taking the risk, and I'm thoroughly excited to talk about these.
So look, Disney, even though they've kind of been on hard times themselves over the last year with everything going on, they have the money to throw at that, to throw at the people to be creative and say, this is what I envision, this is what I want to do with it. I hope I don't mispronounce his name, Kevin Feige.
That's right.
The head of the MCU. The one thing I have to give him credit for, two things. One is he has this overall arching vision for everything together, and he will let you do whatever it is you want to do, but it still has to fit in and tie into this overall vision of what they're doing. And that's not easy to do, but they find ways to do it. And it's like I said, he'll let people do whatever they want, but it still has to fit in, and we have to find a way to tie it into everything else that we're doing in some way. And the reign that they have, I mean, there's no reason why. I can see why it's one of the biggest things out there, except for the video game. That's hot garbage, but that's beside the point.
The video game, I enjoyed part of the video game. It does get a little repetitive. I don't play online, though, either, so I know people complained about the online part, but I thought the story mode was okay, but it's not really part of, I wish we would get a more proper video game than what we got.
I think for me, they lost me, and they lost a lot of people when, and I get they probably couldn't do it for licensing reasons, when you had like the dollar store versions of the Avengers, as far as like their models, and like you spent so long building up Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson and all these people, and Chris Evans as these characters, and now we've got like the off Broadway versions of these guys, and I think that turned a lot of people off in the get-go. Like, wait, this isn't the Avengers. Like, I'm watching them on the screen right now, and this is not them. But that's, like I said, that's a whole nother topic of discussion.
Yeah, so let's get into it. The episode that we're going to talk about in this one is just called Episode 1. They did not give it an actual name. It was written by the showrunner, Jack Schaefer, short for Jacqueline. Directed by Matt Shackman, and it premiered on January 15th, 2021 on Disney+. Fun thing here, every episode is apparently going to have a different theme song written by Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez, who wrote the hit song Let It Go from Frozen, and also scored by Christoph Beck, who scored Frozen and Frozen 2, along with the Lopezes. So Disney keeping it in-house there. So I guess just a quick rundown of what happens here. The main plot line is Vision's boss is coming over for dinner, and hilarity ensues, like a normal sitcom. I guess initial thoughts, Casey. What was your initial thoughts on episode 1?
So when I first heard about WandaVision, like I said, I had no knowledge of Wanda or Vision outside of the actual movies. So I don't know anything about the comics. I don't know anything about the different incantations of Scarlet Witch or Vision or anything like that. And the 8 different comic series, I knew nothing of it. Loved them in the movies. Didn't know anything outside of that. I read, they kind of kept a lot of it close to the vest about what's going to happen. But the basic gist is like every episode has a different theme. Like you said, they have a different theme song. And it's kind of like a different sitcom from a different generation. And I thought, wow, this is either going to be the greatest thing in the world or it's going to tank horribly, because I don't like, until we see it, we're not going to know what to think.
Right.
I am 158.6% on this ride. I don't care where this ride is taking me. I am here for it every Friday to watch this show when I get off of my mail route and to sit down and see where this is going. It is daring. It is creative. And it's just a good time. It looks like the actors are enjoying themselves. It looks like there's a lot of creative input going into it. And I want to see where the adventure takes me.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that I had kind of the same reservations at the beginning, when you first hear about it, the same kind of thoughts of, well, this is either going to be spectacular or it's going to fail spectacularly. But I have faith in Kevin Feige and Marvel after their track record. And I think going in knowing that, like, I read some of the reviews, the reviewers have seen the first 3 episodes. Yeah. They say episode 3 is where it kind of starts maybe picking up a little bit more of kind of breaking the formula of the, like not focusing so heavily on the sitcom plots. I'm guessing that's where it starts making a turn. But remember, we have 9 of these. If this was a 6-episode series, I would probably be a little bit impatient with the first 2, but we got 9. We got 7 more of these to go. There's room to explore some of this stuff. And I really enjoyed episode 1. I think it's my favorite of the 2, actually. So I thought it was really funny, not like ironically so, like unironically, really funny. I think a lot of the jokes land. This made me laugh more than Superstore, which we'll talk about probably when we record tomorrow for the break room. This week, anyway, I feel like this landed a lot more jokes.
I watched this after I watched that episode of Superstore. And I think right after I texted you guys my thoughts on Superstore is when I was hitting play to start this. We'll get to it tomorrow, but this was a much more enjoyable time for me than that episode.
I did it the reverse. I watched these 2 first, and then I watched Superstore.
So I like, from the movies, I don't know how this works, but I get that Wanda and Vision, who was formerly Jarvis,
yes,
are in love. I'm not sure how that works. Look, the heart wants what the heart wants, except Vision doesn't have a heart. So once again, not really sure
the robotic heart. Yes, the robotic heart wants what the robotic heart wants.
This may be wrong, but I got to say this anyway. I can see why he would fall in love with Wanda, Elizabeth Olsen. She is fantastic. She's a fantastic actress. She's incredibly beautiful. So yeah, I can see that's not hard to do. And to see them as a married couple in the 1950s or 60s or whatever this is imagined to be, it's not something I ever could have imagined. But I mean, I'm 42 years old. While I didn't watch it when it was on, I do remember seeing episodes of The Honeymooners and Leave It to Beaver.
Right.
And you know, classic sitcoms like that. Where I think it's the second episode we'll get to. We see them sleeping in separate beds. And I Love Lucy, prime example, where we see them, you know, married couples used to have to sleep in separate beds on television. And I remember watching those as a kid. And this kind of brought me back to my childhood, where I kind of thought of myself like sitting there in front of the television with my legs crossed, like looking up at this TV, you know, seeing this in black and white again.
Right. I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm only 29, but I used to watch Dick Van Dyke. I used to watch Leave It to Beaver and Gilligan's Island and any of these, you know, older shows, Bewitched, which is very similar to episode 2, which we'll get to. But yeah, just all those, you know, original black and white sitcoms from the 50s and 60s. And it just kind of took me back to that. I felt like I was watching on like TV land. I mean, even the beginning with the Marvel Studios logo turning, you know, to a 4:3 aspect ratio and then turning black and white was just a nice little touch there that really set the mood, knowing, okay, this is where we're going in now to this 1950s sitcom. The opening theme song, very reminiscent of the Dick Van Dyke Show. I mean, you even have Vision, you know, in that opening theme song, Dick Van Dyke usually trips on like the ottoman and falls over. You know, Vision's holding Wanda and is about to run into a chair, and he just phases through it. So some little references there.
After he phased to try to go through the door, and
yes, with her
drops poor Wanda.
I mean, it took a little bit of adjusting, like when it happened. I mean, I already knew this is how it was going to be. So if somebody didn't know how this was going to be, watching this is probably very bizarre. They're probably thinking, how long is this going to go with the fake sitcom? But even on my second watch, because I watched these another time before we recorded, just a good, enjoyable time. Still laughing at the jokes for me, and still just having a really enjoyable time, and, you know, trying to look for clues and stuff. And since you're not a big comic hound, I guess, I do have some stuff that I've dug up, and I've also read some comics as well, that I'll be able to bring up little references to that and kind of give you some background on what might be happening here if they go a certain route.
Yeah, so obviously it was trending on Twitter, and it was all over all kinds of social media networks the last couple of days. And during whatever few minutes I would get here and there, I would scroll through, and I saw like articles on BuzzFeed or whatever, and 25 little Easter eggs in the first 2 episodes, right, and what they could point to. And once again, with me having no knowledge, but they did explain some of these, like, okay, this person or this character could be leading to this person in this comic series who was and did this. And it's like, okay, sure, let's see where this goes. So let's look at the story here. So like you said, Vision, they move into this brand new neighborhood, typical 50s suburb. The only thing I guess they were missing would be the white picket fence.
Right.
But you know, she still has a wedding dress on. Like we said, they get in the door. He accidentally drops her, but they have the typical, you know, married life. Things are going well. Wanda brings up she's going to make this big breakfast, but Vision reminds everyone he doesn't eat. He's a robot.
Right, yeah.
Honestly,
and she's using her magic to put all the dishes away and accidentally hits him in the head with them.
Yeah. In all fairness, I kind of forgot. I know it's still in black and white. He's still in his Vision getup, but I kind of forgot he was. I don't know if robot is the right term. Android. Whenever the robot uprising comes, I don't want them coming after me for using the wrong term. So if I offend any of my future robotic or android overlords, I'm gonna apologize in advance here. I don't know the right term. Please don't skin me alive. Uh, but it was great. As I told you yesterday, Paul Bettany, who plays Vision, I would not have known who he was if he walked into my house with a sign that says that's who he is. But 2 days ago, I watched the Da Vinci Code again, and while I'm watching this, I'm looking up trying to see what Paul Bettany has done. Obviously, I knew him as Jarvis and Vision, and then I see he was in the Da Vinci Code, and I'm like, wow, I literally just watched that. Had no idea, but he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah, I think he really plays the sitcom husband from the 50s very well in this show. And for me, he's kind of the outstanding actor in this role in this show for me so far, because he's playing something totally different than the usual Vision we see. And he's hamming it up like the 1950s stars would do. With some of his acting and such, but he's playing like, he's playing the role the way it's meant to be played, as if it was a 1950s, not as a android acting like a human at this point, and he just nails that really well. And his comedic timing throughout the first 2 episodes, I think, have just been really great.
I gotta say, one thing I like too is the old laugh track.
Yeah, they actually filmed the scenes like this in front of a studio audience.
Really?
Yes. They kept that under wraps, but yes, they did film these scenes in front of a studio audience. I guess because probably the scenes that don't have any of the weird hiccups that would attract attention, like the like the scene with the choking that we'll get to later here. I'm assuming that one was not filmed in front of it. That probably used a laugh track, or they filmed it a different way at first and then filmed the more dramatic version later, just so kind of like spoilers doesn't get out. But
can you imagine somehow how whatever means they did, where you find out you're going to sit through a live taping of WandaVision? Obviously, the NDAs you're going to have to sign to be part of this is going to be ridiculous, because if you break it, you're going to end up in Mickey's jail, and that's probably the worst one to be in. That's probably a little worse than Guantanamo Bay, if you want to be honest. But can you imagine, like, having to keep this inside you, like you were part of, or you've been able to see the first few episodes of something like this?
That would have been incredible. Because I would have genuinely enjoyed it. Especially if you don't really know what it is and you just show up and you realize it's Wanda and Vision in 1950s and 60s, sitcoms. That would be a lot of fun. I'm not sure if everything's going to be filmed in front of a studio audience, like when we get to the 70s and I guess 80s and 90s sitcoms that are coming up soon, but it's going to be interesting. Man, I would love to have just been a part of that. I'm sure some of it was probably just family and friends as well, to kind of limit some of that NDA stuff. Like they would still have to have an NDA, but they would be less. They would be less likely. Yes, more trustworthy, but less likely to spoil it, because these would be people related to people in the production. So I'm assuming that was probably more of it than just regular people.
Let's be realistic here too. If somehow one of the two of us happen to go see something like this, right? We're just random dudes. We happen to have a couple podcasts, but we're just random dudes. And somehow we decide we're going to take the chance of going to Mickey's jail, and we're going to break this NDA and put this information out on the internet. Who in the blue hell is going to believe us about what we saw?
That's true. All you got to do is post it to Reddit or 4chan, and people will start believing it's real, though. They'll spread it, at least.
To an extent, until they're like, wait a minute, who is this guy? Like, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not taking the chance of getting on the bad side of Mickey.
Right. So next, sorry, go ahead.
I like some of the kind of the jokes of the fourth wall breaking of Vision at his job, where his buddy or his guy at the desk makes the joke of like, you're like a robot, And Vision has to be quick with
Yeah.
the nope, I'm not a robot. And then his joke of, well, what do we actually do here?
Right, and they make computation forms or something, and their productivity is up 300% since Vision came. Yeah. Let's backtrack real quick though. We have Vision noticing a heart on the calendar. The day is August 23rd, and both of them wonder what it could mean. They think it might be some sort of anniversary or something like that, and that's when Vision, goes to work. He almost forgets to change his face from the Vision face to a human face. And then we get the neighbor, played by Catherine Hahn, Agnes, and I think
fantastic casting.
She is really good in this. Oh my, she can fit into any decade, really. She's played so many wonderful roles.
And she is another great comedic actor from her roles in like all
Parks
the
and Rec,
like Step Brothers and Parks and Rec, all the things she's done. The comedic timing she has in her acting is another great job. That casting was A+.
And one of my favorite jokes of the whole episode is said by her with the, sorry I didn't come by earlier. My mother-in-law was in town, so I wasn't.
Yeah, and this is definitely like you said, this harkens back to those age-old. Well, there's a couple things that harkens back to those age-old like sitcom tropes of don't like the mother-in-law.
Yes.
Or oops, the husband forgot the anniversary.
Right.
Except in this point, neither of them know what the heart is there for. But obviously, it's kind of pointing to, oops, the husband forgot the anniversary again. How's he going to dig himself out of this one?
Yes. And another trope that we'll get to later, too, is that, the phone call between the two of them where they each thinks they're thinking of something else.
The miscommunication on the phone call there.
Very big. Happens in Frasier all the time. Happens in a bunch of those, what is the word I'm thinking of? It's a sitcom, but there's like a specific sitcom trope that is. Anyway. So Agnes asks Wanda if, why is a single lady, what is she doing as a single woman in this big house? And Wanda says she's married, to a human man that's tall. And Agnes says that she doesn't see a ring. So that's the first kind of reference to Wanda or somebody not thinking through the whole thing here in this world.
One thing we got to look up, how tall? Paul Bettany does look rather tall. I'm actually going to look this up. I'm sorry. But he definitely is up there in height.
6'3".
Yeah, I could see that. But and then there's I guess like you said, the things someone didn't think about where she asked, well, how long have you guys been married? Where did you guys come from? And Wanda has no answer.
Yeah, because even if we think about it, I guess this is where we can kind of get into it too. How long has she been into this, if it is a reality that she or somebody else has created for her? The theme song says that they, just moved in. It seems like, though, Vision's been at his job for a bit, but yet Agnes is just now coming over to introduce herself to Wanda. So it's kind of hard to tell, do you think her first day or their first day into this fake reality that somebody's created?
Well, I'll say this. It's their first day in that house because they talked about if they hired movers or whatever, because obviously they didn't need to because Wanda just uses her magic.
Boxes don't move themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I guess we have to think of, is this pre, during, or like post-snap?
This is supposed to be post-snap, from what they've said.
Now, I got to watch Infinity War again. Did Vision? I can't remember. Does Vision come back in Infinity War or no?
He does not come back. No. So he is dead at this point. So that leads to some questions that I think I'm going to have later that I bring up here, on if he's actually really there, or is this all something that she is constructing, or somebody else is constructing. I guess that's what we don't know yet, is who is behind this sitcom reality, perfect world, Westview type of
This
world.
Here's a weird thought. What if did she survive the snap, or was she one of the ones who was? I think she was eviscerated during Thanos' snap.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah, she was, and she came
Maybe,
back in Endgame. Yeah,
yeah, maybe this is what she's going through during the snap. I don't know. Like, there's and like you said, we have 9 episodes to figure this out and to go on this journey. But there's like this is definitely meme worthy, of one of those confused face memes where it's just like, I don't know what's going on. But
yeah, the guy with the like question marks surrounding him the whole time,
yeah,
tilting his head.
yeah, any number of confused things. Like, and like I said, I'm sure we're gonna find out at some point. But that was some of the things that popped in my head. Like, when obviously is this real? Is this her imagination? Is this an alternate reality? Is this in her head? Is she imagining this? Is this in Vision's? Is Vision's computer mind creating this during the snap? Like, I don't know. I'm just lost. But I love it.
So we get Agnes mentioning her husband Ralph for the first time. His name will come up a bit. We have yet to see him. There's some theories about who he is. We'll get to at the end of this episode, or at the end of the next episode. And we get to see Vision's office. This is what we were talking about just a bit ago. It's some sort of computation place. We have Yakety Yak playing on the radio.
That is so great. Just that song, and just him, and we get to it later, him singing Yakety Yak is just fantastic.
It's good setup. This is classic sitcom where everything kind of plays off and pays off at the end as well. Like we said, productivity is up 300% since Vision came, and he has to say that he is a human person with biological parts, or whatever he says. And we get Mr. Hart coming out of the office mentioning that he and his wife are looking forward to dinner with Vision. And that's when it hits Vision that that's what the heart was standing for, or meaning on the calendar. And he's a familiar face. He's played by Fred Melamed, who played Jonah's father in Superstore.
Yes, I couldn't figure out. Like, I know I've seen him in a ton of things, but I couldn't. I was looking at him and I'm like, I know this guy. Why can't I figure out where I can place this guy in something I've seen? Like, I know the face, I know the voice, but I couldn't figure out where.
Right.
And yes,
doesn't it feel good once you realize where somebody's from?
Yeah,
it just makes you feel so good. It's like itching a scratch.
Because I'm like, I know this dude, but I just don't know from where. But I've seen him in a million things.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff, but I just think it's funny that, of course, with us doing Superstore and stuff and talking about him on there, and now coming over here is like another little connection to the show. We get Mrs. Hart later. She's played by Deborah Jo Rupp, most notably from Friends and That 70s Show. Yes. So Mr. Hart mentions that the dinner is very important. He references Jones was fired from his job due to not impressing.
As he's leaving with the typical box full of stuff coming out of his door.
And we don't know what Jones did wrong. His wife made a 5-course meal. He wore a turtleneck, and he also had a string quartet. It sounds like a lovely time.
That's too fancy schmancy for me, man. I'll be honest with you. But it did sound like it was a great time, yes.
It sounds like he was trying to impress, and maybe that was the issue. Who knows? We get flashback. We go back to the house now, and Agnes is helping Wanda, trying to figure out what this, Wanda says it's an anniversary, and Agnes is trying to help her set up for it, and mentions some seduction techniques, like stumbling and falling, so Vision would catch her. And noting that the death rate of single men is twice that of married men. And then that's when we get the phone call with the characters, Wanda and Vision, just totally thinking they're on the same page, but they are not.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of what magazine they were reading. I'm guessing it was some version of like a Cosmo or something. Maybe
She
set back
says
in the
Cracker
50s.
Jack magazine too at some point.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know when this came into play. How about the commercials that came in?
Oh, that's right
during...
here. Yes, that is right here as well. It is a commercial for the Toastmate 2000. It also has our first bit of color with the red light beeping. That's the first bit of color we've seen. And the sound effect sounds like Iron Man's repulsor beams as well, from his gloves when he's firing those up. And it is a Stark-made product, and it also starts ticking a bit, with the flashing light, kind of sounding like a bomb. And some people were theorizing that these commercials are somebody trying to remind Wanda of her past, or maybe she's thinking of her past, because if you remember in Age of Ultron, she talks about a Stark bomb landing in Sokovia and not detonating.
And
so some people think
her and her brother trapped in there for.
But interesting. What was your take on the commercials? And also, when we get to next week as well, the next episode, we have the same actors in the commercial that were in this commercial, which was interesting as well.
So I enjoyed the commercials because it kind of took me off guard. Like, I was not expecting them. And as I'm looking at some of these, so this series is going to be one where I'm going to watch it all now. And then once everything is done, I'm definitely going to have to go back and watch from the beginning and try and piece all of these little things together that are going to lead us to wherever it is we're going to go. Because they're putting stuff out there for us. It's just we have to piece it together. And I have no clue what it is. I don't know what the commercials are leading to. I think they're hinting at something. I did catch the Stark information. I did catch it was in a later commercial or in the next episode. What's the octopus there?
The Hydra logo. Yeah.
Yeah. I did catch the Hydra logo, but for me, without having much info from the comics or knowing the history, I don't know a lot of the stuff that maybe it's pointing at, but I'm scouring this. It's like one of those hidden picture puzzles, or like a Where's Waldo thing, and you're trying to find Waldo, but you don't exactly know what you're trying to find.
Right.
You know?
You're looking for something that's not Waldo because you don't know what you're looking for yet. But at the end of the season, you would be able to point out Waldo. Is kind of what it is. At some point, this stuff is going to make sense with the commercials, I think.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, like you said, at the end of the season, once you know what Waldo looks like, then you can go back and be, as you watch it from the beginning again, oh, okay, this makes more sense now. But the intrigue that they're keeping into the average person is a fantastic job, once again, because, they could be very blunt about it, maybe, just beat you over the head with it, but they're smarter than that. That's why they're running Marvel and doing these things, and I'm a mailman. And they're making you try and find these things, and they're sending the internet ablaze with theories and thoughts. And is this pointing towards this? And does this mean this? And is this person this person? And then there's dudes like me who are just like, sure, okay.
So let's get back from the commercial here. It's dinner time. The Mr. and Mrs. Hart walk in with Vision, and Wanda has all the candles lit, and she's dressed.
Some seduction going on.
Yeah, she's dressed in a sexy nightgown by 1950s standards, at least. And
yes, but regardless, I'd say just about anything would look that way on our lovely actress there. But please continue.
Yeah, the best Olsen. She puts her hands over Mr. Hart's eyes and says, "Guess who?" And Vision walks in and he's like, kind of like, "What's going on here?" The lights come on. I believe the lights come on, right? And she realizes that it's Mr. Hart, and she doesn't know what's going on either. So Vision takes her aside in the kitchen and says, "The heart is for Mr. Hart. This is dinner with my boss." And she kind of makes the point of, why did we have to abbreviate? Like, you're a robot. I can make things move with my mind. Why couldn't we have just put something on there? Which was a pretty clear point. But also, we have, them making references to her dress. And I think this line is delivered perfectly by Paul Bettany when he's saying that dress is so Covian.
Yeah. He makes inference to the fact that she's from it's Wachovia,
Sokovia, yeah.
Sokovia. So she had some European tendencies there, which is why she put her head over her hands over her boss's eyes. That's how they introduce themselves in Sokovia.
Yes.
And this being the 50s, the boss makes the commie comment or whatever there.
Yeah, he says we don't break bread with the Bolsheviks.
Which is about the most 50s thing you can possibly say.
Yes. So then, Wanda realizes she has to make dinner, and we actually have Agnes come in. I guess she called her or something to help with the dinner. Now, Agnes also asks if she should preheat the oven. I think that might come in play with the next episode that we'll talk about, maybe a bit. She also brings over a pineapple.
For the upside down cake.
Yes, which again might play into something later as well from some theories. But well,
actually, I think before that she came over and made the comment about, of course, she has like a 5 or 6 course meal, ready on standby at a moment's notice, and she brings over chicken and duck and all these crazy things, that Wanda's supposed to cook.
It was another great sitcom moment too, where like Wanda's trying to get her out of the kitchen and she kind of does that turn away from Wanda and comes back in. Like I feel like I've seen that a lot in some of those older sitcoms as well.
You also get the great thing of at some point where Wanda is using her magic to cook and there's crazy things flying around the kitchen, but there's a lot of noise being made. So yes. Is it the boss or is it his wife?
Mrs. Hart. Yeah.
Mrs. Hart goes to open the thing, and that's where we get the great version of Yakety Yak.
Yes, sung by Vision.
To distract him because he can't see his wife using magic, but it's just so great, and obviously it brings your attention there. Wanda has this confused look on her face while there's things flying around.
Closes the window with the flick of her finger, and gets back to cooking. She overcooks the chicken with magic, and then she reverses the cook and it goes all the way back to eggs, which I thought was a great gag as well. And then she calls Vision in to help with the meat tenderizer. But now, the way I heard it, she says "damn," right?
I don't know. In all fairness, I'm not sure if that would have been allowed in the 50s. They were very strict on these codes
right.
and things.
And that's what I was wondering. But then Vision says he's being called in, and Mr. Hart says she calls you Diane, which I feel like had to have been damn then, because I'm not sure what else comes from that. And Vision says it's a nickname, and then he calls to her saying "coming, Fred," to kind of just play it off a bit there.
Yeah. So he gets to tenderize the chicken, or the steak, because that's the only thing that's left. and he
Oh
is
yeah, the
absolutely
lobsters flew
pulverizing
out the
them.
window. That's right. She flew the lobsters out of the window as well.
He absolutely pulverizes that steak. I can't imagine there's anything left of it.
And I like this too with Wanda switching with Vision now. She's trying to entertain, and she just immediately brings up the fact from the magazine earlier, or from Agnes earlier, but
But
totally,
obviously gets it wrong.
yeah. Did you know married men are killing single men at an alarming rate?
Because of course women's brains in the 50s can't handle these facts.
And Mr. Hart's just like, what are you going on about? And then she pulls the falling maneuver, the stumble and fall to fall into Mr. Hart's arms. And then that's when Agnes knocks on the door to bring the pineapple over.
Eventually things that or Mrs. Hart is starting to get a headache and
Yes.
they're getting hangry, as the kids would say nowadays, which I don't think was around in the 50s. He's getting upset. She's getting a headache and things. And dinner's finally served, but it's breakfast for dinner, which, hey, I'm all for, man.
Yeah, I just knew Mr. Hart would complain about something anyway. And that's when they start asking their questions, right? They're asking, when did you guys move here? When are you gonna have kids? How long have you been married? Just where do you come from? All this stuff, all at once, without even giving them a moment to answer any of them, really. And then they start, Wanda and Vision are kind of pausing and trying to come up with their story, and that's when we get Mr. Hart kind of starting to demand an answer, and that's when it gets kind of very Twilight Zone-esque, right?
Yes.
He starts choking on the strawberry. It kind of switches from the typical sitcom 3 multicam setup to really focusing on Wanda and then focusing on Mr. Hart. The choking is coming. We get close-ups of Mrs. Hart. She's kind of laughing, saying stop it, but then it kind of changes into this exhausted, scared laughter of stop it, and it really changes everything. And this is how I wrote it down on my notes. I say Wanda breaks character, right? She stops being 1950s Wanda and says Vision help him.
Yes.
Totally different voice, totally a different way she's saying it. And this is where I think maybe this proves that Vision is not actually real. He almost she had to demand that he help him, and it makes me feel like she is controlling some of the stuff going on here, and he was not able to act on his own volition, almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah. He wouldn't have made that move had she not been there to tell him that. And obviously that all that was done on that's one of those things that's leading us somewhere. With the change in the dramatic music and the change in tone from Wanda to very just bluntly say Vision help him. Which, quick side note, they couldn't come up with a better name for Vision. I get that that's Vision's name, but Wanda is Wanda Maximoff. Vision couldn't come up. He has a human face. He couldn't give himself a human name. Yeah, he couldn't go with Jarvis. This is a weird bone to pick, I know, but nobody in the world is thinking Vision is a weird name for someone to have. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You know what, though? I think that this show would have been a hit in the 50s as well. When you have Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, I can just imagine this show actually doing fairly well. The
reruns of this would be on Nick at Night right now.
Yes. Everything goes right back to normal after that. That he was choking on the strawberry. Vision phases through him and gets it, and then he kind of gets up and just says "Oh, look at the time! We have to go."
Okay, stop. Let's take a quick Zach Morris timeout here, real quick. I know Vision is a cybernetic organism or an android. He is not a real human. And I don't know if this was ever explained in the movies, but what is with him phasing? What is with him walking through certain things or phasing through certain things and some things not?
It's a good question. I'm not sure on the fake science of it. I'd probably have to do some research on that because I'm looking for some stuff now on how he can exactly phase like that. I'm not sure.
Like he kind of chooses to do it with Mr. Hart here. He forgot to do it through the door, or he did it through the door but couldn't bring her through. He doesn't do it through the when he trips over the ottoman. You know, once again, this is a weird, and I'm not being picky about it. I don't have anything negative to say, but I just don't get the how and why he can kind of reach through some things and some things he can't reach through. And
so apparently the way it is here, he has density manipulation. So he can control his density, weight, and mass, and that is what gives him the ability to phase through solid objects. They say that comes from the Mind Stone that he usually has. That was broken by Thanos in Infinity War, so I do think it is more clue that he is not actually there, is how I read it. But I feel like everything going back to normal almost adds to the eeriness, right? It almost feels like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, like it was expected, because then he's sitting there like, oh, great job. And all of a sudden, Mr. Hart is very happy.
You're getting the promotion. We'll talk about
the promotion on Monday. And it's almost as if nothing ever happened, or it was a test and he passed this test that he didn't know he was taking or something.
Yeah, it was very weird. And when they're leaving, one of the lobsters is hanging on the door. Again, that's another one of those sitcom, everything comes back, right? Like it's another one of those, everything that was set up was paid off at the end here. Then we kind of get them, saying the line that was in all the trailers. We're a very unusual couple. And she makes rings for them. They decide that this will be their anniversary and that Yakety Yak will be their song.
Look, I think we have talked about this on our other podcast. I'm not a big relationship guy in sitcoms or movies and things. Like if it's there, great. If not, these two make a fantastic couple. The chemistry between these two, at least in the first two episodes, it's unbelievable. And as the kids would say, I definitely ship these two.
We get the fake credits rolling, and we kind of zoom out to what I noticed were kind of feminine hands. They look like a woman's hands writing in a notebook with a logo on the notebook and a logo on the computer. So this is where I'll give you, for any listeners that do not know, the logo is for the company or the agency called SWORD. So we had SHIELD, now we have SWORD. SWORD in the comics is different than what SWORD is going to be in this show. SWORD in the comics stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department. In the MCU, from set photos and stuff, it looks like they changed what the W stands for. So it stands for Sentient Weapon Observation and Response Department. So in this case, do they see Wanda and Vision, or just Wanda if Vision's not real, as a sentient weapon? And I think the answer is yes, because of her power levels. They're thinking that is where that's coming from. She's a sentient being. She's a weapon because of her powers, and they're observing and responding to, I guess, what she is created or somebody is created for her in this reality.
Yeah. I don't know how accurate this is. It has been said. It's gone back and forth a few times about who is the actual most powerful Avenger. And I guess one of the consensi, whatever, is that Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, is the most powerful Avenger because of what she can do. Once again, I don't know because I don't read the comics, but
I would say yes. It would probably be Wanda or Captain Marvel, actually, when you look at power levels. They're both very strong power levels. In
all fairness, she kind of put it to Thanos for a little bit there in Endgame too.
Oh yeah, she did too. Yeah, so I think that proves it right there too. Thanos made his own army fire on his own army and himself to get her to let go,
and she was very upset at Thanos. I use his line there a lot when I deal with some of my male customers, when she tells him, "You took everything away from me," and he just looks at her, he's like, "I don't even know who you are."
Yes.
And that just made her even more upset.
And that's the end of the first episode. We have some Easter eggs that I caught here and that other people have caught that I just wanted to bring up here as well. During dinner, when she's pouring the wine, setting up the wine, the wine that they are drinking is called Maison du Mépris, or Méprise. It's French, which translates to House of Contempt. But a very famous X-Men comic story is House of M. So, that's where, so it'd be Maison du M, House of M. And there's a big M on the neck of the bottle. It is a big storyline where Wanda loses her mind and lost control of her powers, thereby transforming reality. So very, kind of a parallel to what might be happening here. People mention that the real credits at the end kind of borrow the aesthetic from House of M, which is, mainly the way Wanda rearranges reality by breaking it down into block-like form that they kind of have with the, multicolored credits at the end. And posters at a supermarket Wanda is shopping at. I guess that was in the next episode, or was that in this one?
The supermarket? I
don't
think
remember
it's the
her.
next.
Yeah, I don't remember. We'll get to that next time then, because I don't think that was in the first episode. But yeah, so very strong start, I feel like, to the show. I was very impressed with the first episode. Yes, 99% of it is just normal 1950s sitcoms, but it was charming and it worked.
It like I said, it really, the first episode definitely had me hooked. It's one of those things where, like I said, I don't know where this is taking me, but I'm willing to hop along this ride and go wherever it goes. And it's definitely, it's creative. The cast and crew look like they're having fun. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, like, this is the kind of thing we need to see more of. Some take chances and be daring. And they definitely did it with this.
Yes, definitely. You can't get much weirder and off the wall than WandaVision so far. So we'll wrap up the first episode here. I'll give you our socials, and then the second episode will be right on the feed as well. Just breaking them up in case if you only had time to watch the one, if you're going to space them out yourself. You can follow us on Twitter at To Infinity Saga, TO Infinity Saga, Facebook.com/Infinity Saga Beyond. And email us at marvelplusrecaps@gmail.com. Yes, that doesn't match any of the other ones, and that's because the podcast was originally named something else until I realized somebody else had that name already, and I just had to kind of change that. And where can people find you at, Casey? Do you want to share any of your Twitter handles or anything?
Sure. I am at McGeorge36, MC George36, pretty much anywhere and everywhere. Honestly, I probably need to get more involved with some of that stuff. I used to be really big into a lot of it. I'm mostly on Twitter now and some on Facebook, but in case everybody doesn't know, I'm a mailman, so the pandemic has had me very busy during this whole time.
Plus
so
the holidays that just ended.
The elections and the holidays and the pandemic, I've been working crazy hours. So I'm not posting as much as I should. I'm interacting with a lot of things on there, liking or tweeting, but I'm always willing to listen and engage in some thoughtful conversation on some of these things. Maybe we agree, maybe we don't. But hey, let's keep it civil and we can have some fun with it.
Yes, definitely. So we'll drop off here and we'll catch you all for episode 2. and have a great rest of your week.